Hello everyone, welcome back to my zoology class. Last class we talked about the chapter, evolution chapter. We're going to continue with evolution. Last class we talked about the origin of the universe, the planets, the earth, and then the origin of life. Now we're going to talk about the proof, the evidence that shows that evolution did occur. Okay? So the first one is evidence from paleontology. The first word that comes to your mind when you talk about paleontology is this, the study of fossils of animals and plants that has been dead long time back. You know about fossils, right? You have already learned about fossils. What are fossils? Fossils are basically the dead remains of plants and animals that has been gathered as the sediments get accumulated. As the sediments get accumulated, it gets cemented and then forms rocks that are called sedimentary rocks. That's the reason why you get lots of fossils in sedimentary rocks, okay? When you talk about fossils, the most important thing is that they are, in order to learn about the age of the plants and animals, they undergo the process of radioactive carbon dating. Radioactive carbon dating is a process in which the carbons are radioactive in nature. Basically, you know that a carbon is composed of the atomic number 6 and atomic weight 12, right? So when it is this one is atomic weight is 14, that means it is a radioactive carbon which is highly unstable. This helps in learning and knowing the age of the fossil. That is the most important thing. The next one in case of paleontology is the geological time scale. I want you to read the definition of geological time scale, in which it says, by studying the type of fossils in different rock strata and determining their age by radioactive dating, carbon dating, geologists have constructed a geological time scale. A geological time scale means a scale, kind of like a scale chart diagram, where you will be able to know the various stages of the fossils due to the complexity of the fossils as it goes up. Okay, so why is paleontology important? Paleontology is important, the fossils are important because they show that evolution did take place. The most important example among that is the missing link. Why is it called the missing link? The missing link is a type of a condition where it is a link between the reptilians and the birds. The most common example is called the Archaeopteryx lithographica, which was found in Germany. This is a fossil which shows a link between the reptiles and the birds, that is the avians, okay, which showed that the reptiles and the birds were together long time back and then they slowly got separated. This is the most important evidence. Archaeopteryx lithographica. So what happened in this fossil was that when they found out that it had got the characteristics of a bird which showed beaks, feathers, as well as a wishbone. You have heard of wishbones, right? That is found in, basically you have heard of wishbones that is found in when you eat chicken and all, you talk about wishbones. There are certain bones that is found only in the birds, okay? So besides that, there is the characteristics of the reptilians, like the presence of teeth, the presence of tail, and then the presence of fingers, digits, where it shows the claws. This was a very important link which showed that the reptiles and the birds were long time back together and then they got separated. That proved as an evidence for evolution. The second one is evidence from comparative anatomy and morphology. What do you mean by anatomy and morphology? Anatomy and morphology basically is the overall internal as well as the external structure of a living organism. So when you take into consideration the anatomy and morphology of a living organism, again there were so many proofs. The first proof is called the homologous organs. What do you mean by homologous organs? Basically, these organs have got the same basic structure. When you look at the diagram, this is the diagram of a seal. This is the diagram of a bird. This is the wings of a bird. This is the horse forelimb. You know what is a forelimb, right? And then this is the human arm. When you look inside the bones, they found out that they are composed of the same composition of bone structure, that is the humerus, radius and ulna, carpals, metacarpals, and phalanges, which prove that they had the same basic structure. But what happened was that since all these organisms have need to perform specific function, like in case of seals, they have the flippers which help in swimming. In case of birds, they have the wings which help in flying. In case of horses, they're used for running. And in case of human arm, they are used for holding things, right? So what happened was that the basic structure was the same, but in due course of evolution, they say that the outer structure became different. Okay? The outer structure became different as well as the function became different. This is the reason why it is also called a divergent evolution. What do you mean by diverge? Divergent evolution means it will, from one point, it will diverge out. Okay? So it leads to the same group of animals diverging into different outer structure in order to enable it to function properly. Okay, so how do you define homology according to homologous organs? It is the similarity in the basic structure of organs of different animals based on common origin, that is the common basic origin. Okay, so what does it prove? This proves that evolution did occur, and in due course of time, because of the necessity of the living organisms, they changed the overall outer appearance. That's what it proved. Okay. The second one is the analogous organs. In case of analogous organs, what happened was that they found out that when you look inside the basic structure, like the bones example, that it was not there. It was not the same. But when you look at the outer overall function, they found out that it performed the same function. That means analogous organs are those organs which are not from the same group, but they have characteristics which perform the same function. Okay, like in case of a dragonfly, it is an insect, right? In case of a bird's wing, you know that birds comes under the avian order. In case of bat wings, a bat comes under the mammalian. So these are all different groups of animals, but they have got the wings, the feathers, and the wings part in the bat, which helps them in flying around. In case of dragonfly, it is composed of just an extension of their exoskeleton. What do you mean by exoskeleton? The outer structure. Basically, an insect is hard outside and soft inside. That is why it's called exoskeletal. In case of birds, it is basically an extension of the wings. It is composed of feathers. But in case of bats, it is an extension, their wings is an extension of the folds of skin. Okay, so these are all different types, but they perform one specific function, which shows that evolution took place in due course of time because of the necessities, because of what they needed to do in order to perform specific function. This comes under analogous organs, which are called convergent evolution. Convergent means different orders of living organism, they come together to form a specific function by the specific parts of the organism. That is called analogous organs. In case of analogous organs, when you define analogy, we can define it as the superficial similarity, that means the outer one, in appearance between organs of different animal groups, because they carry out the same function. That is, it comes under evidence of comparative anatomy, that is overall structure. The third one under comparative anatomy is vestigial organs. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you talk about vestigial organs? The first thing that will come to your mind as a science student will be the appendix, right? Why do you always talk about the appendix? You always talk about the appendix because it is the structure that is present, but still then it is not doing any work. Every part of your body is supposed to do work, right? But when you talk about the vermiform appendix that is found near the colon and the ileum, where is it? Near the big intestine. It is found that they did not perform any particular function, but it was still there. That means what the scientists concluded was that maybe long time back this vermiform appendix, because human was more herbivorous. Herbivorous means they ate more of grasses and plants and all. Since they were more of herbivores, this vermiform appendix was working, okay? But in due course of time, due to evolution, as human got evolved, they started eating meat and all. They started eating fruits and all. So this vermiform appendix slowly stopped functioning, okay? The second example is in case of the human eye. When you look at the human eye, when you look inside your human eye, you will see a membrane called nictitating membrane. This is a white fold-like skin that is found inside your eye, whose basically the main function of nictitating membrane. When you look at birds, when they blink, you will see a thin film of membrane coming and closing and then going back again. That is basically the main function of nictitating membrane. Okay, in case of birds, you will see that. But in case of human, it was no longer functional. That comes under the vestigial organs. Then you have also heard of some people talking about having the ability to move their ears, right? That is called the pinna muscles near the ears. Their muscles are called pinna muscles. These are the muscles that was possible, like in case of animals and all, they move their ears in order to remove the pest and all. But in case of human, the muscles became rudimentary. Okay, it stopped working. This comes under the vestigial organs, where it showed that long time back, these organs were functional, but in due course of time, due to evolution, they stopped functioning. So how do you define a vestigial organ? A vestigial organ can be defined as those which are rudimentary and poorly developed organs on body parts that are non-functional and useless to the possessors, whoever it may be, but were functional with the ancestors. That's what they said according to the vestigial organs. Remember that. The fourth one is atavism. What do you mean by atavism? You have heard of cases where they say that it's abnormal, where someone gives birth to babies with a little bit of a small tail, right? That is called rudimentary tail. That is reappearance of tail. You have heard of that cases. And then you have heard of, which is quite common, we have heard of people like having the ability to move their ear muscles in human, which is very common in fact. This comes under atavism. In this case, what happened was that the characteristics, which is rudimentary, no longer working, suddenly appears in the present generation, which showed that it can be functional again, and it stopped functioning because of evolution. So how do you define atavism? You can define atavism as the reappearance and functioning of certain ancestral characters or organs after several generations, which has either completely disappeared or greatly reduced. That is the definition of atavism. That means reappearance, coming back again, the characteristics coming back again. So what does it say when you talk about atavism? This also supports evolution. Okay, that's what it is saying. Since the rudimentary organs come back again and work again, or show the characteristics again. The third one of evidence is evidence from embryology. The third one of evidence of embryology, in this case, we will take the first example of the sperm and the egg. Sperm from the male and the egg from the female. In this case, what will happen is that when they undergo the process of fertilization, they give rise to a fertilized egg. Okay, this fertilized egg is called the zygote. So what is a zygote? Zygote is basically the fertilized egg. So what happens is that when in case of human, when the sperm and the egg gets fertilized, it leads to the formation of a zygote. After it forms a zygote, slowly the fetus develops. How does it develop? It develops by replicating their cells. When they replicate their cells, they start dividing the cells. They start becoming bigger and bigger. These stages where the cell starts becoming bigger and bigger, leads to the formation of certain characteristics and certain structure called morula, blastula, and gastrula. So what they said was that from this evidence of embryology, they say that every living organism had these characteristics of division of cells, in which the cells divided into morula, blastula, and gastrula, which supported evolution. Since all living organisms had the same characteristics, after that they start dividing, okay? But the most important example was resemblance among vertebrate embryos. What do you mean by vertebrate? Vertebrate basically are those which have got the notochord, right? Which have got the spinal cords. So in case of the embryos of vertebrates, what they found out was that when you look at this diagram, this is the embryo of a tortoise, this is the embryo of a rabbit, and this is the embryo of a man. What they said was that initially, before it is actually formed into an adult, or before it's actually formed into a baby or a fetus, what happened was that at the initial stages, all the embryos are similar in structure. Remember that. All the embryos are similar in structure, in which they show at having tail-like characteristics, which proved that long time back, everyone had tails. Remember that. Besides this, in case of vertebrate embryos, they showed the presence of notochord. Notochord basically means your spinal cord, okay? And then what they observed was that every embryos had gill clefts. Basically, when you talk about gills, you think about the fishes. The first thing that comes to your mind is the fishes, right? So it is quite, when you think about it, it is quite impossible to have gills. But what they found out was that at the initial stage, when the embryo is very small, they had gill clefts, which are very similar to in all the embryos of vertebrates. That means the vertebrates were all together as one long time back, and then they diverge out. That is called divergent evolution. Remember that they spread out. The vertebrates, they spread out and form different species and different groups of animals. That comes under divergent evolution. The fourth one is evidence from molecular biology. When you talk about molecular biology, the first thing that should come to your mind is basically you should think about the genetic constituents. So what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you talk about genetic constituents? The first thing that should come to your mind when you talk about genetic constituents is you are going to talk about DNA, right? Basically, a living organism have got a specific set of genetic compositions, which comes under the DNA. The DNA which has got the bases arranged together. So what are the bases of DNA? There's a general formula called AGTC in case of DNA. That is adenine, guanine, thymine, cytosine. Remember that. Adenine, you have already studied in class 9 and 10 regarding this topic. Adenine, guanine, thymine, and cytosine. So you're going to talk about the DNA in case of molecular biology, which proves that evolution did take place. So what is the first proof? In the first proof, they took the example of man and chimpanzee. Okay, this man and chimpanzee, when they sequenced the DNA, okay, the molecular and then the molecular composition, what they found out was that the man and chimpanzee had similarities of 98.2%. That is the similarity, which indicate that they had a common ancestor, and from the common ancestor, they diverged out. That is called divergent evolution. Remember that, okay? Divergent evolution. So, besides this, what are the evidence from molecular biology? Under molecular biology, besides the DNA, the blood group also comes. What they found out was that when they looked at the blood group of man, ape, and monkey, you know that man is composed of AB, and O blood group, right? And in case of ape, they found out that the blood group is composed of A, B, and AB. But when they looked at the monkey, they found out that the blood group is only composed of AB, which indicated that man and ape are basically are close together, and they evolved very closely, which shows because of the blood group, which indicate that evolution took place. Remember that. The fifth one is evidence from geographical distribution. Geography. When you talk about biography, you talk about the distribution of plants and animals on the whole of the earth, okay, when you talk about biography. So when you talk about geographical distribution, that means it comes under biography, where the plants and animals are observed and seen and looked into where they are distributed. So when the scientists first observed this, they say that long time back, the earth was composed of a general big mass of land, okay. This general big mass of land divided into 6 parts, okay. This division of 6 parts is called the 6 geographical realms, okay. These 6 geographical realms was the division of the land. When the land was divided, they say that all the living organisms also got divided, the plants, the animals. So as they got divided, they got distributed to all different parts. So what is the proof that says that? That says that they were all together, and due to evolution, they got distributed and moved out. The most common example is the camels and the llamas. You have heard of llamas, right? You find these llamas in South America. It's a little bit fuzzier and a shorter version of camel. And in case of camel, it is found in Asia. So it is in a completely different place, which indicates that, the scientist says that initially they were from a common particular place, and then they got distributed and they got separated. In cases of the plants also, it is the same. Besides this, the last one is evidence from connecting link. What do you mean connecting link? That means something is getting connected, right? So in these characteristics, what they said was that, when you talk about connecting link of organism, they talk about an organism which shows the primitive characteristics of an animal along with the modern characteristics of an animal. That means it is like an intermediary, okay? It is like a bridge, which shows the connecting link between the olden age and connecting link between the modern age. The most common example is the virus. Virus is considered to be a non-living and a living components, yes or no? So that is called the virus. That is the common example. The most important example is called the euglena. It is a protozoa. What is a protozoa? Do they come under prokaryotes or eukaryotes? They come under eukaryotes. That is the one which has got a true nucleus. What is a true nucleus? Last class we talked about it. A true nucleus is those which have got a proper nuclear membrane. This is called a true nucleus. So what they found out was that euglena has got both the composition of plants and animals, and it is an ancient one, primitive one. In this case, what they found out was that euglena, when they looked at it microscopically, they found out that they had composition of chloroplast. What is chloroplast? Chloroplast basically helps in what? Photosynthesis, right? In case of what? Plants or animals? Plants. Remember that. Besides that, they found out that the euglena has a contractile vacuole. A contractile vacuole basically is a spherical structure whose main function is to collect food in a cell. What is this food called? This food is called glycogen. This food is called glycogen. So basically the contractile vacuole is for storing the food, which is called glycogen, and this type of contractile vacuole was found only in animals. That means this euglena is carrying both the characteristics of plants and animals, right? So in due course of time, what they said was that plants and animals, they are having the same characteristics in one organism, that is the euglena, which is a single cell organism. And then it got separated, which led to the formation of plants and animals. Remember that. That is called divergent evolution. Okay, besides this, I want you to write the notes on these definitions. in case of atavism, this is atavism, it is the reappearance or functioning of certain ancestral characteristics or organs after several generations, which has either completely disappeared or greatly reduced. Remember that. So how do you define biogeography, geographical distribution? The study of distribution of plants and animals in Earth's surface is called as biogeography. So these are basically the main evidences that prove that evolution did take place. Okay, these are a small part of the evidences. I'll not be going into all the details of evidences since you'll be finding in the textbook, but I would advise you to get hold of the other textbooks and look at it. Now coming to the seventh one, that is we're going to talk about the current evolution. That is the present evolution proof. Okay, so this current evolution proof was taken with regards to a moth. Okay, this moth was named as Biston betullaria and Biston carbonaria. This name is a scientific name. That's the reason why we always underline the names. In case of Biston betullaria and Biston carbonaria, remember that. In this current evolution proof, this proof was very important because during this proof that evolution took place because of natural selection. That means it was selected by nature. So what happened here? What actually happened here? This happened during the 19th century in England. What happened was that during the 19th century, there was great amount of industrialization, right? When you talk about industrialization, that means a large amount of industries came up. When the industries came up, they started producing products. When they started producing products, they started emitting what? They started emitting fumes, gases and all. So what happened is that in England, near the industries, in the forest, they found out that on the trees, there were specific moths present. The moths was actually light-colored moths. Okay, they were found in large number. They was found in the tree barks everywhere in the forest, and they were light in color. But when the industrialization started, the tree trunk started becoming gray in color because of the gases and the fumes. As it started becoming gray in color, the trees and all, branches and the barks and all, what happened was that the moths became more prominent. Okay, so when the moths became more and more prominent, it became an easy food for the birds. So the birds started eating the light-colored moths. These light-colored moths, what happened was that their population decreased. But this light-colored moth, the population decreased as a result of which, due to natural selection by nature, okay, the dark-colored moths started thriving. Why? Because the tree barks and the tree branches were dark in color. So when they were dark in color, the dark-colored moth also, they were not visible to the birds. So when they were not visible to the birds, they could survive. Okay, so when they survive and they produce in large number, that means they started increasing their population. This is as a result of the evolution that took place, which comes under natural selection, which is selected by nature itself because of the industrialization during the 19th century in England. Remember that. This is very important because the natural selection, you talk about natural selection all the time. This natural selection is those selection which is done by nature itself. You don't need to do it. Every living organism, every plant, they're selected by nature according to the suitability of the particular environment and the particular conditions, which also helps in evolution. Remember that. This comes under the current evolution, which shows Biston betullaria became less in population as compared to Biston carbonaria. Remember that. Okay, so we have talked about all the 7 points that all support the evolution, that is evidences of evolution. which all these points together, they are basically a scientific proof. That's the reason why it's coming under your textbook. So besides this, next class, I'm going to talk about a Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, which I'm going to show you a chart. So I would advise you to look through the net, or if you have a textbook, look through the Hardy and Weinberg equilibrium chart, and then come next class. And then I will try to wind up this evolution chapter by next class. So that's all for today, and see you next class.